Namaste, hello, and welcome back to the Product Uncensored show with your host, Colin Pell. We are at episode 13. It has been a great journey since episode 1, and we're still going on strong. So, very few things that we need to sort of get out of the way before we begin. Number one, if you haven't done this already, if you're new to this show, can you please click on the subscribe button below? And I highly recommend that you actually click on the notification bell that's next to it, because it means that you will be notified immediately whenever we have new content. If you prefer to listen to the Product Uncensored show on your way to work, from work, or as you're traveling, we are also available on all major podcasting platforms. It should be coming up around here right now. And we're actually available in more, but these are the major platforms that I notice our listeners tuning in from. So before we begin, one last thing. Check out the background. I'll give you extra points if you can tell me where that background is from. But if you can't, it's okay. It's not really that important. It's just, I like to change things up, make things a little bit more interesting. What is very interesting that I can tell you for sure is our guest today. He is our first guest from India, who is now based in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. And he is actually the head of product for Mudah.my. Can you please give a round of applause from wherever you are to Mr. Prateek Roy? Welcome to the show, Prateek.
Hey, Colin. How are you?
Very good, very good. Very nice to have you on this show. And listeners, I have a very interesting story for you. This is actually not the first time we're trying to do this show. So if you realize, we didn't have a show for about the last 3 weeks before the one that got dropped with Mike, and that was because it was supposed to be the show with Prateek, but unfortunately we ran into some technical issues while trying to record the show, so we had to reschedule, and so he's now episode number 13. He was actually supposed to be episode number 12. So thank you so much, Prateek, for really spending more time than most of our other guests to make this work.
No worries. It's a pleasure.
Okay. So let's start with your childhood in that sense, because it's very special because you're the first guest from India. So tell us a little bit more about where you grew up and how did you end up studying IT?
Right. So my childhood, it was in a very eastern, remote part of India, a very small, very, very small city, but it has a very good education system at that time. So it was a convent school, and I did entire schooling from one school. And after the school, in India, there is this entrance exams for engineering, right? So then I sat for one of the entrance exam, and I did average, and then I landed up into a very good private college near Delhi. So from Eastern UP, Uttar Pradesh, it's another state from India. I moved to near Delhi.
How far is the distance between Uttar Pradesh and Delhi?
It's by train, it's almost 14 hours.
Oh God, like a different country.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very big difference in the distance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that place was so small that they didn't have a direct connection by railways or something. So you have to take a bus to go to some other city and then take a train there. So that's what India is about, so big and vast.
Okay. And you studied, you did a Bachelor of Technology, majoring in Information Technology.
Right, that's correct. Yeah.
And at that point in time, what was it that drew you to study IT? Why did you decide to study IT?
So I had quite a bit of interest in computer science from childhood. So, and I still remember my dad bought a second-hand PC for me when I was in school. Although at that time of school, we were not doing much of coding or anything, but I used to play some games or run some DOS commands and all. So it was very old system I was using that time. So I still had quite a good interest in the computer science. So that was one of the driving factor for me to pursue my studies in this. As well as I think in that time in India and even now, it's a very good education system around this area, and there's a lot of job opportunities as well.
Okay. So it was partly because of your interest, and also partly because of career-wise, the kind of opportunities that you thought you would get.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. In terms of your computer age, let's see how old or how young you are. Were you from the era of the MIRC, ICQ, or Windows Live Messenger?
Windows Live Messenger.
Oh, okay. Yeah, then you're
I'm
definitely
still young, Paul.
Yeah, for those of you who know MIRC, oh my gosh, you can join me in the old folks' home next door after this show. So okay, fantastic. And so tell us a little bit more about after you graduated. You took a job in India, right?
Yeah. So I think I just want to share one more thing, that during college, I had a good fortune that I was able to do my internship with CSC. So it was Computer Science Corporation. It was one of the biggest tech company at that time. Now it is merged with HP and all, so they become even bigger.
It's the same CSC that's found in KL as well, right? Is that the same?
Yeah, that was the same one. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I did my internship there, and it was quite a good experience for me for about like 8 to 9 months. So I learned a lot, went through that culture of working in a multinational. They had flexible timings for us. So you can even go 2 a.m. in the morning, and then you can work there till whatever time you want. So there was some good experiences and good mentorship I got. So that's another good thing which happened. And then from there, after the internship and after graduating, I joined a company in South India. So actually, I was doing my college from North India. I got a job in the South India. So if you ask for a distance, it takes two nights train journey to reach there. But of course, we flew there when I got the job. So that was by starting off my career in South of India.
Okay. And so from there, how did you end up getting out of India? Like, did you choose to leave India? Were you like dying to leave India? What was it that made you take a job that was outside of India?
Right. So basically, when I started my career in India, we were still in training, and I was doing this Java training. And actually, we were being trained for a certain specific projects to come over. And but in the meantime, when they were still materializing, they had one short-term project back in Singapore. So, and it was a testing project. So I was like, so they asked me whether are you interested to go there. We're like, yeah, why not? We should try it out. So that's how I moved to Singapore. So once I did my 3 months project there, the company asked me why don't I stay permanently in Singapore, and so they gave me some certain opportunities to continue my career as a developer in Singapore. So that's how I came out of India.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think you made a good point. I think from the time you started in India to even your time when you first set foot in Singapore, at that time you were still working within the software development role, right?
Right.
Okay. And then when did you get your first gig as a product manager?
That was quite far down the line. But what was happening is, I think, so that the company I changed. So then I moved to Malaysia. So how I moved to Malaysia was because of this company, which was the first company in the first project. It was Lenovo Japan. So the customer was Lenovo Japan. So we used to work from a quality assurance team for Lenovo Japan. And so I used to travel a lot and things like that. So at one moment of time, I decided that okay, I want to stay in one place, and company also moved me to Malaysia, and then I changed the job to another company as a senior engineer there. So it's called GrassValley.
Okay, this was like GrassValley. Okay.
GrassValley, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there I had maybe the first, how to say, an interaction with the actual product person or a product leader. So that we used to have a head of product or a director of product who used to sit in US. And so we were the kind of an engineering center for them. So that was my first interaction with a product manager. And eventually our team grew in Malaysia and we had a product manager as well, our own product manager, but that person used to sit in US as well. Time to time we had interactions with those people as well. So that was my first interaction with product people.
Right. So before that, were you aware of this role called product management?
No, not at all. I was not.
So definitely you didn't grow up, putting in, studying IT and saying, my ambition is to be a product manager.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. Yeah. So it's very interesting, right? It's very interesting because when I was even in that company and I was doing a little bit of product role because product manager was based in US. And I was also doing the Scrum Master role in that company, GrassValley.
Yeah.
And when I moved to iProperty, actually I applied a job for a Scrum Master and it didn't happen. So they internally promoted somebody. But then there was this option for product role there.
Right. Okay.
So the recruiter asked me, "Are you interested into this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why not?" So that's how I landed up into a product role job.
Right. Okay. We're going to jump into that, that transition when you joined iProperty. But I wanted to pull back into GrassValley for something that is very interesting to me. And I don't know whether it's interesting to you because you obviously worked there. Right? GrassValley was a company that dealt with media production. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. So what they used to do is they make hardware and softwares for a lot of news channels and also. And so if you see a proper studio in a news channel, you will see a lot of screens, a lot of bigger mixers, and where a lot of live telecast happen, how they switch from one studio room to a news anchor and then back to advertisement and all those things. So all these things are through a very sophisticated software and hardware system. So GrassValley is one of the pioneers into that.
Mm-hmm. So the question that I really wanted to ask is, and this is going to sound really dumb, but I still have to ask it. Did you ever ask them why they named the company GrassValley? It sounds like it has nothing to do with production at all.
I have no answer for that.
I mean, because I still remember the first time I heard of GrassValley was quite a few years back. I think that time an acquaintance of ours, Z, was working there.
Yes.
And I kept trying to imagine to myself, what industry is GrassValley in, and then I find out later that they were into production. And I'm like, wow, that is so not, so here's a little tip for, entrepreneurs out there, people who are starting your company, try to name your company something that's kind of related, so that people don't get confused like me, you talk about GrassValley and but anyway, back to GrassValley, right? You said you were doing the hardware and the software for news production systems. So what was the role of the KL office and your role in QA? Was it on the hardware side or was it on the software that was helping to power the hardware in that sense?
It was more towards the software side. Yeah, so my role was more towards the software side. But the thing was that when you are testing it, right, so you need to ensure that the environment is there for you to test as well. So, and that's where my curiosity towards the hardware was also quite high. So I used to create those environments and all, and it was very interesting. And even I was fortunate to visit certain newsrooms and saw the actual things in action. How does it happen and all? So it helped me to really understand. Oh wow, what a critical system it is. And so that was very interesting for me.
Okay. Did you ever get to visit the... Oh, wait, maybe I should ask the question another way, right? Did you also deal with the software, for like especially in the US where it's very popular to have the weatherman or the weatherwoman and they have the screens behind? Did you guys do the software for that as well?
GrassValley used to have it, but we didn't. I didn't have the chance to play around with that. But yes, if you see a complete end-to-end system, yes, it is there. It's part of
Oh,
it.
okay. Yeah. Sorry.
It's very
Yeah. To our
yeah.
listeners, I'm like going off track, but I've always found the production side of things for news, especially because growing up, well, when I was growing up, we didn't have the internet and we watched the news all the time. I still remember when we used to sit down for dinner, and then my dad would be glued to the TV because it was news time. So news
Yeah.
holds a special place in my heart. So
Mm.
sorry,
It's called prime time.
exactly prime time news, right? Okay,
Yes.
we have totally gone off track now. Let's move back. So you said that from GrassValley you moved to iProperty as the product manager, right? And you said that you actually applied actually to be the Scrum Master, didn't get it, and then decided to apply for the product manager role. Now, what made you decide to from applying for a Scrum Master role to suddenly applying for a product manager role? What made
Mm.
you want to transition into product management?
Yeah, actually, it sounded quite exciting at that moment. That because I knew that product managers had by that time I had the knowledge of product management, that how much value it creates into the entire system, right? So I was very curious about it to really go deeper, and I thought that's like one of the good opportunity for me to try it out. And I think our property gave me a right opportunity to start with that.
Okay, so let me ask you a more uncomfortable question, because I hear this a lot, right? They're saying, "Oh, I became a product manager because I wanted to develop it." But technically, as long as you're part of a product development process or team, whether you're a developer, you're
Hmm.
QA, or Scrum Master, or product manager, technically you're delivering value. So, what was the
Right.
difference for you between delivering value as a product manager versus the other roles within the product function or within the
Hmm.
product development team?
Yeah, interesting question. I think so. For me, I think let me backtrack what engineers in my way that how they deliver value, right? So when you get a engineer, when you're an engineer, you already get the requirements in, and then you start working on it. Like, hey, how should we deliver this particular requirement? And of course, you become creative. You collaborate with different engineers and testers and all to deliver something. So it's more about how what you want to do. When you are at Scrum Master role, you also try to do a bit more of team dynamics. You start understanding not only how to deliver, but why it has to deliver. What has to be delivered. All these things came into consideration. But when you're into a product role, I believe that it's more about you start visioning something, because you start solving the problems. Instead of just delivering a feature set or a product, you start solving the problems. So yeah, you get a little bit of different view, a bit more higher view of what exactly you have to solve, instead of just focusing on delivery of a feature. So that's where I think that's the difference which I see from a product role.
Okay, okay. And when you joined iProperty, did you go in straight as a senior product manager, or did you start off as a product manager role?
I started as a product manager role.
Okay. And when you got there, um, what was the first thing that you did as a product manager, right? Because you're not just changing company, you're also changing roles. So because in GrassValley, your last role was Scrum Master, and then you transitioned to product management with a new company. So how did you go about sort of setting yourself up as a product manager in a new company?
Hmm. Interesting. So I have some stories to share there, right? So my very first day as a product person was not good. So in fact, 2 days was not good, because when I went there and I had a chat with my some certain PS, which were marketing head and the sales head, and the way they came and then they explained the entire product to me, I was like, oh no, because I was completely lost into that. And I was like, did I made a mistake switching to a product role, and I'm capable enough to do it or not? So that was my first 2 days of confusion, and I still remember very, if you are in Mid Valley, you know that the iProperty office was in the above Plan B building, and
Mm-hmm.
I had my lunch in Plan B, and I was still thinking about it. That okay, did I made the right choice or not? So
Yeah. Sorry,
that
just
was
before I continue, just to give our listeners some context, for those of you who are not Malaysian, Mid Valley is actually one of the biggest shopping malls in Malaysia. And there's also the corporate buildings that are next to it, within it, around it as well. So, the office that Prateek is referring to used to be adjacent, right, to Mid
yeah,
Valley at that time. Yeah.
yes, correct.
Sorry. Please
Yeah,
continue.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so that was the first thought into my mind, right? And but gradually, when I had a bit more interactions with my boss, my senior, and then he actually was one of the big contributor in my development of the entire product thinking. So he started to channel my thoughts into a right way. What should be done? What should not be done? What should be my focus areas and things like that. And interestingly, the product role in iProperty used to sit at the business side, not in the tech teams that time. So I was more, my first few months were more about understanding the business and what are the terms and things which are related to that.
Right.
So that was my first thing. And then second challenge which I had was also, since product managers were from the business side, so it took me some time to be close to the tech teams, get their trust into me and my trust into them as well.
Mm-hmm.
So those were the first few things which I focused on. And then eventually we started to work on certain product features. How do we simplify certain problems? There were certain business challenges upfront related to revenue, and also we started tackling them. How to write certain good user stories and requirements and all. So that those were the first few challenges which I did.
Okay. Were you the first product manager in iProperty when you joined, or was there other product managers already?
And there were other product managers as well.
Okay. Okay. So you were talking about how when you joined iProperty, you were seated on the business side. So I'm assuming that business and tech sort of sat in different parts of the office.
Yes,
Um,
correct. Yeah.
and and based on what you were saying, that it took you time to sort of build up trust. Was it because you weren't sitting together with the team?
I think that was one of the reason, but I think you know what, another reason was also partially my one of my learnings in my career. So what happened was, GrassValley was very how to say, mature in terms of their agile processes, and
Mm-hmm.
iProperty was actually quite new to those agile processes. So what happened was, eventually when I joined and I started to that was one of the mistakes which I'd made, that I go full force into like, hey, your agile process is not good, this is not right, that is not right, you should do like this and you should do like that, within the first few days of my joining. So, and it actually it was quite a bad experience, because team also felt bad and they took a step back, and after 1 or 2 days I also realized that, oh, it's a mistake has been done. So then there was a big gap which was created. So it took me some time to close that gap. So that was the one of the reasons.
So interestingly, when you join, as part of your role, you were saying that you were trying to get them, or get iProperty as a tech team, to improve their agile practices. And that is,
Yeah.
again, something that I notice in a lot of product managers' experiences, including mine, right? As in, when we join a company or we take the role at an organization, we're trying to deliver value on the product side. But most of the time, I hear stories where we're actually dealing with something that is kind of not directly related, but something that needs to get fixed in order to deliver value. Would you say that, as a product manager now, of course, looking back in hindsight, do you think that that is something that is very critical? And what I'm trying to get at is, you're not just dealing with product management functionality in that sense. You're technically trying to fix the whole end-to-end process of how value is delivered.
Yeah, I think that's very, very important point, because as a product person you own the entire stuff, right? So once you have this ownership, it comes end to end. You cannot just take ownership of one specific piece and you say, oh, only I will focus here. But actually good product persons actually go end to end. They own it. And it's not necessary that you are an experienced and into end-to-end system and you start building tech processes or engineering processes or quality assurance processes and all. But it's more about how do we make it more efficient so that the entire value chain becomes better.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. I like that explanation. And then again, so still drilling into the same part of the conversation that we're in. What did you need to do in order to build trust? Because you're saying that at first not seated together, and then you tried to change things. Then you realize something wasn't the right thing to do. So how did you build that trust with the tech team?
Yeah. Important thing is to go lunch with them. So food, I believe in Malaysia especially, food binds people together. So yeah, I think so. I started to have a lot of lunch sessions with them. Started to understand what is their problem as well and what is their. And another thing was acknowledgement. So you should acknowledge that you have made a mistake, right? So I was pretty open and told them that, hey, sorry, I made this mistake, and now let's go back to the drawing board, go back to basics, and start from there. I think these were the two things that were the key when I started this process.
Yeah, fantastic. I like the part where you talk about going for lunches and food, because one of the other guests on the show, Sharon, I'll put the link up here somewhere. She was also talking about when she first, came to Southeast Asia to work, and in her context, it was in Hong Kong, I believe. She was relating this story where she was saying that she realized that lunch sessions seem to be longer in Southeast Asia as compared to, in the UK, where everybody eats their lunch at the table and just, quickly goes through it. But the thing is that it is a very important, almost like an important ceremony for people to go lunch together. I think especially within the Southeast Asian culture, simply because I think during lunch is when people, colleagues, peers, they don't just talk about food. It's also talking about, hey, this is a good time to discuss ideas, get people's thoughts very informally, I think. So I think the part of, and correct me if I'm wrong, right? But I think that the informal setting of a lunch makes it easier for people to actually open up, as opposed to the rigidity of an office setting.
Totally agree. Totally agree. So a lot of time we forget this piece, right? About collaboration. So collaboration has to happen when everybody comes together in a free environment instead of just in a closed meeting room, 3 to 4 kind of time constraint manner. It doesn't happen too effective. And if you go it in a bit more informal way, I think that's where the more collaboration happens, more idea sharing happens. People free up their thoughts and they can share a lot more actually. So that's what my experience is as well.
Yep, I agree. And for listeners, viewers of the show, here's a little tip. I think from my own experience, Prateek can feel free to chip in if you have any. But I think that from time to time, it's always good to take people out of the office and have discussions in a different setting. So whether it's just taking a couple of hours to go have coffee while you discuss, brainstorm something, or just do a prototype testing in one of the cafes, just something that breaks the monotony of just being in the office. I think that really helps the team bond. And to Prateek's point, the collaboration sometimes is different. I think the nuances and how at ease people are, I think there's a difference.
Yep, totally agree.
Okay, great. Now, let's move on. So, product manager in iProperty Group, then you became senior product manager. Was this? Now, let me see how I can phrase the question. What did you need to do? Yes, in order for you to move from a product manager to a senior product manager, and I believe that at this point in time, it was still a single individual contributor role.
Yeah. So even so Maybe I think when I moved to senior role, I think why it was because one thing was curiosity. So iProperty Group was also not just Malaysia, but we have in Indonesia, Hong Kong, Singapore at that time as well. So I was also getting very curious at how other markets are doing, what they are doing, what different they are doing, what is their product sets and all. So when I joined iProperty Malaysia, it was just focusing on one section of product line, which was the agent section of the product. But I started to venture into or look into what is the developer side of products, where we can contribute more value. What is the consumer facing goods and what other countries are also doing. So I think that was one of the key element for me to move ahead, because then when I moved to senior role, I also started to look into Singapore market. I was also looking into the developer section. So that's where I think the expansion of the role happened. So if you ask me, it's more about curiosity, how you want to know more, and how you want to contribute more and collaborate more.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's really sound advice. Curiosity does not kill the product manager in this case. It's actually good for the product manager. iProperty at that time were how many markets were you handling? Malaysia, Singapore? Was there any more, or just these two?
No, only these two.
And but all the development, all the product management was all done out of the KL office, correct?
So no, different entities. So Indonesia has their own product and dev teams. Hong Kong they have their own. Malaysia have, but Singapore doesn't have. So both Malaysia and Singapore were done by Malaysian team.
Okay. So did you have, as your role as a senior product manager in iProperty at that time, how did you decide on what to build, right? Because technically, although you're in charge of Malaysia, Singapore, but stakeholders are also in Indonesia, also in Hong Kong, and obviously you want to make sure that you're building what's valuable for customers. So how did you handle that? Trying to handle by country, basically a multi market sided marketplace.
So maybe I just clarify. So only Malaysia and Singapore was one team from a tech and product perspective.
Right.
So Indonesia and Hong Kong had their own teams, right? So it was more about prioritization between Malaysia and Singapore teams.
Right.
So so that was one of the things which we started working on, that how can we converge certain product into a way that it can support both the markets, right? So instead of having a totally different sets for Singapore was a smaller market at that time. Malaysia was a very huge market for us. So, but instead of that, we still want to have a two product different set. How do we can converge into that so that it's more of a commonality between them, both in terms of user experience or even UX or UI side of it, or even from a backend perspective, or even from a services perspective. So we started to converge into this direction.
Okay. All right. So from there, you've built up your repertoire of product management skills. You've become a senior person there. You then moved to Mudah at that time.
Right.
What was the reason for that? Any motivation?
So there were two reasons. One of the reason was at that time iProperty was bought over by Arya Group, and so it's not that it was difficult to work, but it was more about that change in management, change in responsibilities as well. So that was one of the reason that I was like, hey, I want to be a bit more hands-on and not too many layers to for decision making and all. So that was one of the issue which happened. And then I also realized that Mudah is a place where I'm not focusing on one vertical, but it's more like a horizontal space for me to work. So that was the two motivating factor for me to join Mudah.
Okay. And when you joined Mudah, you moved as a senior product manager, which was still an individual contributor.
Yes, correct.
Then you got promoted to be product director.
Yeah.
Tell us about that change from being an individual contributor to being a line manager, to being someone who now faces management duties and things like that. What was the biggest, maybe not shocks, but what were the biggest changes that you had to learn when you moved, from that product role to a product leadership role?
Oh, very interesting. To be honest, the journey is not very smooth, right? And so maybe I just talk about first of all is the help which I got, right? So a bit of context how Mudah is structured. In Mudah, when we're talking about business heads who are heading each of the business units, they also have a very good product background. So, example, like person who's heading the property, she was a senior product as well with Mudah before. Person who's heading cars was also a senior product with Carlist before. So, and our CEO himself has a good product background. So everybody has this very good product thoughts in their mind, right? So that was one of the very interesting thing when I started working in Mudah, that everybody wants to improve this product culture within the company. And so that was one of the help which I got in one sense. Challenges was how we were structured. There was quite a bit of silos. How do we break down to the silo structure? The other challenge was also how do we converge different roadmaps? So each vertical had their own roadmaps. How can we have a bit more centralized roadmap where everybody contributes? Third challenge for me was also about when there is silos into the verticals, but when they're working on one system, which is Mudah sites, so everybody brings their own okay, I'm working for cars, I just do it for cars and forget about what other categories is about. So how do we converge everybody to a bit more single system kind of thought process?
More streamlined approach.
More streamlined, yeah.
Okay.
And more focus into that. So those were the challenges which I faced, and we are still trying to solve them. I will not say that we have 100% over it, but in few 1 or 2 years, which I see, we have made a considerable progress into these directions. So that was the biggest shift in terms of product only. Third is also about people management. So I was new to this. It's not easy. I think everybody who do people management, they know that it's even difficult than product management. So that was also one of the challenge, and I'm still learning do that. Right? And lastly is I believe that I really worked on my persuasive capabilities or communication capabilities. How do I persuade all the stakeholders? So I started to learn that maybe what technique works for who. so that's little secret. I hope Mudah management team is not listening to it. So there is a different technique when I go to CEO. There's a different technique when I go to talk to some other head of department. So that's how it works. So you just learn it when you go through it.
Would it be fair to say that, based on what you've mentioned, and again, it is not incredibly unique what you've mentioned to a lot of other people who've moved into a leadership role, is that you find yourself having to learn more soft skills than the technical skills that would have made you successful as an individual contributor?
Totally agree. And I believe that that you can only persuade an individual when you talk to that individual on the same language or the same level, right? So example, if you're talking to a person who's very sales oriented, you're telling them what your product will going to do from a technical side of it, they will never understand, right? But how does it bring value to them in terms of sales perspective? Oh, that's great. So you really need to learn the right terms. How do you communicate with individuals?
Okay, so some of the challenges that you've mentioned about product direction in terms of silos and things like that. can you maybe share with the people listening on this show, how did you manage to overcome? Because you're saying it's still a work in progress. I get it, but what were some of the things that you feel that you've done that has actually helped to improve and make things better at Mudah from a product leadership perspective?
Okay, I will try to classify them into three areas. So one is more about execution side of it, right? So execution side of it, very simple. If one team is executing and other team doesn't know what the first team is executing, that's where the problem is. So what we started to do, very simple processes, what we call it as Scrum of Scrum. So we have this once in 2 weeks kind of get together where all the tech leads, all the product people come in and they just share what they're working and what is their next 1 or 2 weeks plan and how does it impact any other team, and or maybe if they need some help from somebody else. So that was from the more like execution side of it, and we realized that it started to bring questions which were bringing clarity not only to that team but to everybody else. So, and even it make our overall execution faster as well, because some teams said that, hey, you're trying to this journey, maybe you will have this hurdle because we had this hurdle when we did this. Like, oh, excellent, these kind of thoughts should come into. So it started becoming more sharing opportunities and things like that, and we started to expand it. Now we started to bring the data team inside it, that how does it impact a data pipeline and any other taggings and things like that. So infrastructure and SRE teams into it. So that was one of the very good forum which is working for us in terms of collaboration between the teams. Certain tools, everybody was using different way of managing their Scrum ceremonies. So one of the thing which I did was, hey, we have to move to Jira. Lot of opposition was there, but finally everybody moved to Jira. So now we have one tool with different projects, and they can collaborate and things like that.
So at that time, basically different verticals or different teams were using different tools.
Yeah. Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That would make it
and
really
not only tools, have very different Scrum ceremonies were happening. Sometimes for some teams sprints is 1 week, for some is even 1 month. So it was very hard to bring them into a one structure. So that was also quite difficult, right? I think another thing which we also did is we did some structural changes in how we are organized, and that was driven through roadmap. So what we did is, instead of having a very specific roadmap for each vertical, we started to combine roadmap into one Mudah roadmap.
Yeah.
And once we have just one Mudah roadmap, then we started to organize teams around the roadmap instead of around the verticals. So that was one of the very big change which has brought up, and it was much needed change. So that also worked very well. And I think in terms of expansion as well, I think from a product side of it, we expanded to, initially there were 2 product managers, now we are 6 product people. We are expanding into UX as well, so creating more UX capabilities within the company. So I think there was some sort of expansion in these. We also realized that we are not good into product management, right? So we started to also, while we are recruiting, we are also trying to upskill our product people as well. So we, that's where we started to join a lot of seminars around like MTP and PMF and all those. So that was also very helpful for us.
Okay. Let's go back to what you talked about in terms of having consolidating siloed roadmaps into one Mudah roadmap. So here's the question for you as a product leader, right? So there's a lot of debate that's raging now about whether roadmaps are still valuable. Is it outdated? Should we be, just value focused? Throw the roadmap away. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it depends on company to company, right? So for me, I think the important thing was what is our strategic goals which we want to achieve. And as a company, so as a Muda, we had certain strategic objectives which we wanted to achieve. And those objectives were not only necessary, uh, are only, how to say, focused on one particular vertical. It was overall as a Muda we wanted to achieve. So example is we wanted to have a better UX in Muda. So how to have a better UX if each vertical has their own objectives and initiatives going on. There will never be a synergy in the UX, right? So if you want to have a better UX as a strategic goal, which you want to achieve within 2 years, we need to combine them into one. So it's really into what kind of business nature and what kind of strategic goals you have, and then how do you converge them to a roadmap. For me, roadmaps are very, very important because it brings focus, it brings a lot of collaboration. And lastly, which I personally believe what we have achieved in Muda is that how do we organize around roadmap? Because a lot of time roadmap is not just, hey, we have to deliver this feature, right? But how do we organize around roadmap? And problem happens when you have a roadmap which is fixed for 1 year or maybe 2 years or 3 years roadmap, and then you just, I think that's where the problem happens. But if you are diligent enough where you are actually working on roadmap, active prioritization every quarter or every 4 months, in Muda we call it as tertile. So we have every tertile, which is 4-month roadmap planning. We regroup, we understand what went wrong, how do we rearrange or even restructure ourselves. If we are, how to say, strategically agile in these ways, I think that's where roadmap is very, very important.
Yeah, I think you make a good point, right? That the roadmaps which usually don't have a happy ending in that sense are usually the ones where it's set in stone, it's committed, and it cannot be changed, right? It suddenly the roadmap becomes the rope around your neck, which as time passes, they keep pulling and pulling, and finally you realize, you know what, I can't do anything but hang myself.
Yeah. And I think in Muda we realized one thing, because we are a stable company, but we also want to be nimble in certain ways, right? So that what I mean is that stable means here that we are very strong in certain core value propositions, and we want to continue to focus on the core functionalities. And nimble here means we want to also be a bit more experimentative in our approach. So this can only happen when we have a bit more a roadmap which changes frequently as we are experimenting and as we are getting the gains in our core functionality as well.
Okay, very nice. Thank you so much for that. So now I want to go to get your thoughts on, now that you're a product leader, you're overseeing a much bigger team. What would you say are qualities that product managers in Southeast Asia, or who want to be based in Southeast Asia, what kind of qualities make them great as opposed to just good?
Okay, I think great product managers is one thing which I feel sometimes a big challenge. Product managers focus a lot on delivering the features. Instead of delivering just the features, they should focus on solving the problems. So if you have that mindset, that what is the right problem to solve, and do we really understand what is the right problem to solve, that makes one of the quality for great leaders. Another is, I also believe, is risk assessment, which I think we always keep it aside. We think that, okay, risks, as we come along in future down the line 2-3 months, then we will see and then we will handle. I think great product managers are also people who have the ability to identify the risk upfront and also has certain mitigation plans around it. Right. So I think these are the two very good qualities which I would like to see in great product managers. And lastly, I think it's more about persuasive capabilities. When you want to persuade somebody, You need to have right information. You need to give options to the stakeholders, not just go with one option and say, hey, whether you want to accept or not. It doesn't work. Uh, have some options, have some evidence around it, why you want to have this kind of option. So that brings knowledge of data and things like that. So I think these will be my three areas of strong words for good product managers, great product managers.
Okay, very nice. And so moving on from that as well, because you basically came from a different country, a different culture, and you've now embedded yourself within the Malaysian market with Mudah. What kind of adjustments did you have to make in order to succeed at your role?
Uh, some very basic one, because I honestly I didn't feel any difference being in Malaysia and being in India, because I personally felt very close to India being in Malaysia. It's a bit more better India, I will say. So when I came to Malaysia, I was in a brickfields area, which is called Little India in Malaysia. The food is great, the culture is great, and I think, to be honest, people in Malaysia are very humble. Uh, you know, uh, so that you always feel the warmth of them. You always make friends with them and learn together and all. So I didn't see that there was a big challenge or big change I need to make. Of course, I need to learn how to use chopsticks. So that was one of the things, because when you go out eating noodles, it's great if you can adopt to that. So I think that's pretty much, just be open-minded, because Malaysia has three different races, and you just need to be open about it and enjoy with everybody.
So in your experience, it sounds like you're saying that culturally, being in India and being Malaysia is not all that different in that sense.
No. I believe India is far more challenging, because India is such a big country, right? So imagine it was a bit harder for me when I moved from North India to South India. It was totally different, because nobody speaks Hindi in South India. Even if you want to get an auto rickshaw ride from place A to place B, it's a challenge. so I believe that the challenges are far more bigger in terms of these geographical or cultural ways in India than in Malaysia, actually.
Right.
I think it's far more easy.
Okay. Very, very interesting. Very interesting. And again, still focusing on Southeast Asia, because you've been, how long have you been in Malaysia? I mean, Southeast Asia, including your time in Singapore. Would it be like what, 5 years?
10 years? 10 years, actually.
Oh, wow. 10 years. Damn. Okay. So 10 years in Southeast Asia. What are your thoughts on the product scene in Southeast Asia as someone who has, embedded himself in the scene? Because, like you said, a part of your role has taken you to different countries, different conferences. So I would love to hear about what you think the Southeast Asian product scene is like to you.
I think it's very, very interesting these days, because I personally believe that we are moving into age of digital, and so a lot of things are happening digitally in Southeast Asia. There is a lot of startup culture which is happening. Big startups are coming up from Southeast Asia. What it is creating is a value which product people should have. Example, how to be a bit more transparent, right? How to be a bit more user focused, how to solve the real problems, because these startups are coming up and they're solving the real problems which everybody is facing. So how to be a bit more customer focused, how to find new ways of working, because that's very critical as well, because everybody wants solutions to be faster, stable as well. So what it is creating these new things where product people are so much into center of it, right? So if we as a product people start being more transparent, solving customer problems, customer focused, finding new ways of working, being flexible enough, I think we are in a great shape, and the whole product culture is, I think, is going to even grow bigger in Southeast Asia.
Yes, here. So yeah, I think I definitely echo those thoughts. Although I must say that this whole COVID situation has really put a damper on it. But I think pre-COVID we were really looking at how Southeast Asia as a whole was really growing and expanding. So let's hope that we get past COVID and that continues to happen.
Yeah. So one more thing is, Colin,
Mhm.
to if I may add on,
Sure.
is more about energy also, right? I feel that Southeast Asia, there's a lot of young, energetic people who wants to learn so much, right? I think even if in our meetups, like agile meetups or PMF meetups, right, there's so much of I see so much of energy there, which is a very good sign.
Yeah, I think the ambitiousness and at the same time being willing to learn, right?
Yep.
Never looked at it that way. Very interesting. Very interesting. So, last question for you on this topic, right? Of product and yourself. So, like in India, there are huge companies. Like Walmart is there. Atlassian has offices there. Facebook, Google. Do you foresee yourself going back to India? I mean, and of course, this is long term. I'm not saying that in the next 3 months you're going to pack up and leave, but because I think, and I'm not sure. Maybe you have a different view, but I think the India that you left 10 years ago, and the India that there is now, I think it's so different in that sense. At least my take on it, India is so vibrant in terms of the tech space, the product space. Yeah.
As of now, I have no plans. I love Malaysian food.
Oh wow.
No, I think jokes apart, but I, I personally believe, yes, it is a very mature market. There's a lot of things are happening, but at the same time, I think that's the role of product people to challenge things which are happening in other markets and how you make it better in Malaysia itself. So it's not chasing what is happening good there, but actually it's chasing what we can do better here, right? So, and I think it's in those aspects there are more opportunities in Malaysia than in India, right? So I see in that perspective where I feel is I will contribute more in Malaysia, being in Malaysia, at least for next few years.
Wow. That I really like that line. Don't chase what is good there, but see what you can improve here. That is perfect. Great. So let's move on to the last part of this show, which is the song. And
Right.
once again, I am always impressed by the kind of selections that come out. And again, this was something that I totally didn't expect. So why don't you do the honors of telling us about which song you chose and why you chose it?
So yes, I'm not sure how others are responding, but choosing a song is a very difficult one.
Oh, I know.
So so why I chose Hans Zimmer. So I really like his how deeply he connects with his audience, and of course the screenplay which he's portraying through the music. So I like this movie Rush, which is a friendly competition between two of the excellent F1 drivers, and
It
this
wasn't
song
really
is
that
called
friendly, right?
beginning, no, but I think as
Yeah,
it develops and it
that's
becomes
true.
more
That's true.
friendly, right? So so this is the song which is called Lost but Won. So that's which I feel like it really energizes me, bring that competitive feeling, brings a rush inside me as well. So those were the things which I look forward these days a lot. So I think that's the reason why I choose this song.
Okay. So do you listen to like Hans Zimmer while you're doing work?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Because I know that there are some people who cannot work with music and some people who can only work with certain types of music. So yeah. So you're in the I work well with music.
Yes, my
Okay.
brain works better.
Yeah, so the link again, would have been up there. It's the song Lost But One by Hans Zimmer. It was from the soundtrack of the movie Rush. Are you a big F1 fan? Because the movie Rush was about Formula One, right?
I was, but I think after those changes in the sound of F1, and now they have limitation, so my interest dropped. And since it's not happening in Malaysia, so interest dropped even further down.
Yeah,
But
that's
yeah,
true. That is sad. Yeah, and plus,
I
Lewis
miss those
Hamilton.
days.
Yeah, Lewis Hamilton is winning too much, so he's boring now.
Yes, exactly. It's becoming one-sided.
Yeah. Well, Prateek, thank you so much for being on the show, and really sharing your thoughts and being extremely candid and transparent about your view about things. Is there anything that you would want to leave the listeners with? Any final thoughts, or any words of encouragement or words of wisdom?
Words of wisdom. I think I will just say two things. One is don't take impediments or hurdle as something which is you cannot overcome, but actually impediments are the ways, they are not blocking the way. So that's one of the thing which I learned. And I think another is from product side of it, how to be a bit more collaborative. That should be also one of the big aim which we all should have. So stay safe and stay healthy.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was Prateek Roy, the head of product with the Mudah.my. Want to thank him very much for being on the show. It's been a great episode 13. I look forward to many, many more episodes, many, many more backgrounds, and many, many more interesting questions. Thank you so much for listening or watching, and we'll catch you next time. Bye bye.